what it really comes down to is luck. You could be in the safest place in Ukraine, and you can get hit by one missile. And even if you're in the bomb shelter, if it's a direct hit, the building collapses and you die. Or you could be a soldier fighting 360 days a year, and you survive the war. So it's a lot about luck.
The ultimate destination for armchair travelers who are looking for inspiration to get out into the real world and let loose their wanderlust. This is The Radio Vagabond.
In this episode, I'd like to welcome a previous guest. His name is Curtin, and we got to know each other on the Nomad Cruise from Barcelona to Brazil.
That's right, Brazil.
This was all the way back in 2018, and we recorded an episode about his extraordinary life as a digital nomad when we got to Brazil.
You kind of blew everybody out of the water with the podcast, and we're like, oh, he has a podcast. Are you on episode 3 or 4? And you were like, nope, I'm doing hundreds. We're like, oh my gosh. So it was impressive. And vagabond is such a close word to my heart. When you said Radio Vagabond, I was like, yes, we have to listen to some of these.
And then you and Martin, another fellow nomad, said, hey, let's start a podcast. And this was actually at a time when I was thinking that my Zoom H5 recorder needed an upgrade, and you took over my Zoom H5, and I got a Zoom H6, and then you actually started a podcast?
Yeah, we did.
But it kind of faded out. You're not doing it anymore, are you?
Well, we had the issue of not being in the same location as co-hosts, and so we were trying to figure out what software to use to have 3 or 4 people on the same recording, and then time zones kind of got in the way. I ended up, where did I go? I ended up back in European African time zone, and Martin bought a house in upstate New York, and we had guests who were in Asia. That was just
yeah, time zones can be challenging when you're a nomad. I just did a couple of podcast recordings for Lego, and then one guy was in Sacramento in California. A couple of guys were in New York. I was in New Zealand, and another guest was in Japan at the time. So yeah, it was all over the place as well. So yeah. I had to be awake at 3 o'clock to do one of the recordings. So yeah, but that's just some of the things that comes with being a nomad.
It's a good thing that Lego figures don't need sleep.
That is true, my friend. Welcome back to the show, Curtin.
Yes, thank you. Happy to be a part of it again. Yeah?
You are listening to The Radio Vagabond, your guide to taking that first step towards living a more fulfilling and adventurous life.
This episode is brought to you in part by Hotels25.com. Whenever you need a hotel anywhere in the world, go to Hotels25.com. That would get you the best price. Hotels25.com searches a bunch of the biggest hotel sites in one simple search. Hotels25.com.
The Radio Vagabond. Gotta keep moving.
Well, we met briefly in November when we were both at Nomad Base in Cape Town. But in the last year and a half, you've spent most of your time in Ukraine. Mm-hmm. So where were you when Russia invaded?
On February 24th, I was in the Netherlands. I was running my my business tattoo custom shirts thing here in the Netherlands. And to be honest, when the war started, it was just another day of news. Like all the other wars, bombings and whatever. I said, well, that's not good.
What can I do about it?
And yeah, well, I'm a spectator. What can I do about it?
Yeah.
Most wars are fought by militaries.
Mm.
So I figured, I don't need to help Syria. The army is going to go. I don't need to help Iraq. The army is going to go.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, there's all the international organizations. They take care of all the other stuff. And we can kind of wash our hands and say, oh, okay. But then that first week, I started seeing videos from my friends. And they were posting them on Facebook. about them in bomb shelters with their wives and children.
But you've been to Ukraine before, right?
I'd been to Ukraine before for work, but also I had friends from around the world who were actually in Ukraine. During COVID, I had done some kind of online conference with Johannes from Nomad Cruise, where we met, and also a new partner of his named Oris, who was Ukrainian.
Yeah, Oris Soup. I met him in Croatia for Nomad Base.
That's right.
And I've had him on the show as well.
And actually, when he was driving to Croatia, he dropped me off at the border. So I went to his house in Lviv, and I needed to go to the Polish border to pick up some supplies, meet some people. And he dropped me off, and he said, "You sure you don't want to stay? We're going to Nomad Base." I was like, "Oh, I really want to go, but
so close." Yeah,
I know, right? So he was posting videos of him and his wife in the bomb shelter, and I had a business partner from China who had a wife and a new baby. They were in a bomb shelter in Kyiv, and they don't speak Ukrainian. He's from the UK. His wife was Chinese. And they were saying to the video camera, like, hey, maybe we're going to die here in this foreign country because there's some war with bad blood from the past, with their little regional disputes and all that stuff. And I was sitting in the Netherlands thinking, is my former business buddy going to die with his infant baby? And that didn't make me feel good at all. And then that weekend, President Zelensky got on television and he said, I call on the world's volunteers. Come here. We need everybody. Nurses, chefs, car mechanics, kindergarten teachers. Like we can find a role for you.
It was like you were thinking, he's talking to me.
Yeah, I can't let the military do it. And I have a very, wide background covering a lot of different industries and topics. So I ended up quitting everything in the Netherlands. I got rid of my apartment. I quit my job. I had a part-time gig as well. I put my main company on hold, put my stuff into storage, and I moved to the Polish-Ukrainian border with no plans. And then I ended up doing logistics. And then just a couple months later, I was hired by a Ukrainian nonprofit organization to be the head of the logistics for them. And now they're, delivering millions of meals, and they just built the first 3D printed school in the country. And
wait a minute, 3D printed school?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was just on the RTE in Ireland, the BBC in the UK, a bunch of different Ukrainian news agencies. It's it's Danish company, Kobot, who is the 3D machinery company, and they wanted to help Ukraine, so they kind of gave a very, very heavy discount on the labor, the transportation, the use of the machine, materials, and all that kind of stuff. And my organization wanted to do the political side, helping massage the right kind of, people into allowing such a unique project to happen during the war and to have it covered, by the news media. So either for rebuilding schools or for population explosions, thanks to internal migration, everybody going to the western side of the country, you can just build a school in a week, boom, with this 3D printing. You can also do bridges, working on bridges. And
that's insane.
There's a lot of cool tech projects going on with drones, drone detection of mines underground. From elevation, they can tell what the temperature of the earth is, like 1 meter underground. How crazy! So all sorts of there's all sorts of things going on inside of Ukraine, and all sorts of volunteers who showed up with a wide variety of skills. And I would say those first few months were pretty magical because you had retired Canadian soldiers, you had teenagers from Sweden. You had Mexican auto mechanics, all just thrust together, fighting an enemy they'd never seen before.
This is the Radio Vagabond podcast.
Let's just go back to when you decided to go, because when I heard it, I thought, yeah, obviously, because I know you. It sounds like something you would do. But what was the reaction with your family and friends, and what did you think yourself?
Yeah, that was pretty typical for the people who had known me for a couple of years, especially for the people who had known me in different locations. So people that were my friends when I was in China and Uganda and Europe and all that. But for the people who only knew me in the Netherlands, it was during COVID times. So I was not a traveler, right? I just stayed here for like almost 600 days in a row. They didn't know my past, really. So when I told them, hey, can I borrow your car and drop off my stuff in storage? They're like, where are you going? I was like, Ukraine. They're like, shocked. They're like, haven't you heard the news? I'm like, no, that's why I'm going. I'm not just on like a cheeky holiday, you know. But and then people said, oh, are you gonna shoot a machine gun? Are you gonna fly a helicopter? I said, no. There are other things to do. But I made the decision from my body, actually. My mind, I didn't want to go. My brain did not want to go. I even made a list of reasons not to go. Paper and pencil, made a list. And it's amazing. Like, notes on the hand, little scraps of paper. But the list was saying, like, look, stay here. It's not your fight. Don't sacrifice all of your own progress for maybe helping some, old lady on a bus try to evacuate. But I would try to sleep at night, and I couldn't. And I would kind of dry heave, and I just felt like, how can you ignore something that you've already thought about this much? And the night that I made the decision to go, I slept like a baby. I was just 11 hours, solid. And that's when I knew, like, yeah, the body wants to go. I was like, okay, we got to go.
So you bought a one-way ticket to Ukraine?
I took a bus to Warsaw, and then I just did word of mouth. I would talk to people that had a Ukraine ribbon on their wrist or something, and they would point me south, and then I'd go to Krakow, and then I'd go east to the border, and then at a refugee center, and then you'd meet people delivering medicine into Ukraine, and then you'd go with them, and you'd meet the people that they're delivering it to, and they would give you a list of stuff they needed. Then you go back to Poland, and you try to source those goods. Then you go back to Ukraine and deliver those goods. And then eventually you have different border crossing points. You get access to different vehicles. For example, some British people had donated 3 vans, filled them with food, and sent them to the Polish border. Something happened, and they had just been sitting there for 2 months. And all the food was spoiling inside the hot vans, in the sunlight and all that stuff. So we did some research. We found a Facebook post when they had launched the vans months ago. We called up the guy who posted that Facebook post, and we're like, yo, what are you doing with your vans, man? They're just sitting here. Give us the vans. We'll use them to deliver stuff, And you talk people into it, and now you've got access to 3 brand new vans with some random, church decal on the side from some town you've never been to in the UK. And you're delivering these vans into the country, and sometimes the border guards will say, do you have the paperwork for these vans? You're like, no. No, we don't. And they're like, what are you going to do? Like, turn away the aid? You're like, oh, okay, you can come in,
Oh, yeah.
But it's, it's all sorts of weird stories. But then people that need logistics help, they reach out and they see who's currently doing it. And my team was mostly Canadian, ex-military, and they were doing a great job putting stuff together. We had, medical experts. We had connections with food. We had toys and clothes and all sorts of, crazy odds and ends.
But before getting on the bus to Poland, you didn't reach out to an organization and saying, hey, I'm on my way. Where should I go and what can I do to help?
Yeah, I before I physically got on the bus, about a week before, I was on Reddit helping veterans join the Foreign Legion as fighters, because I didn't have any fighting experience. I've got type 1 diabetes. The Marines in the United States wouldn't take me about 20 years ago. But I knew other people had fighting experience.
That's why you decided to play rugby instead, right?
Exactly. It's legal. You can even at peacetime, you can hit people. So I was helping the Dutch, the Belgians, people from Luxembourg, Western Germany, get on the right buses and meet the military personnel in Ukraine and help them get to the base. That was working for about 6 days until the base was attacked by Russia on a weekend. I think that second weekend. So then Ukraine said no more volunteers for the military unless you have combat experience. And most of the Dutch and the Belgians didn't have combat experience. So all of my aid, all of my help was for naught at that point. So I had already been familiar with some of the online communities, and they had been saying, oh, should I donate to the Red Cross? And people said, no, don't do the big orgs. Just physically go there, see who needs help, find a good fit, make it personal, right? You meet somebody who's doing a good job, you ask them, who are you volunteering for? And they say, Hands of Heaven. It's a 20-person group based out of Chernivtsi or something. And you're like, oh, okay, I'll join you guys. And so that's what I did. I just went there, and I ended up working at the largest refugee center in the war. That was pretty insane. There were Polish politics going on. There were missing Ukrainians. There were people with dementia wandering about the parking lot. There was a pedophile who had come from hundreds of miles away to prey on the refugees. Like, wow, there was everything going on. The Polish National Guard were assigned to be our security for the toilet in the back of the warehouse. So you had, some 18-year-old French volunteer trying to go to the toilet at 2 a.m. And these two Polish military people are like, where's your pass? And it was just surreal. I was like, what is going on here?
But obviously, in the beginning, you were in the western part of the country. That's where Lviv is, and
yes,
the Russians came in from the east.
Yes.
So the western part of Ukraine was fairly safe, but obviously it's a country at war, so you never know. Were you scared?
Yeah, I would say the biggest fears I had were more personal, from ignorance. Entering Ukraine was a big fear, not because of the Russians, let's say, but because there were rumors that if a foreigner crosses the border, they're forced to enter the Foreign Legion, and you have to fight until the war is over, which could be 10 years or something. So I didn't want to do something foolish, sign my name on the wrong document or, do the wrong thing, and now I'm conscripted, into something, and I'm the only non-Ukrainian speaker in my unit, and next thing I know, I don't have any boots because they're like, forget this punk, he doesn't belong here. I didn't want that, I didn't want to get myself into a weird situation. But as soon as you see other people, for example, a doctor from Norway who's driving a car, and you're like, oh, I'll just follow him.
Mm-hmm.
Those fears go away because, if he's doing it, I can do it. As far as the Russians, I would say there's two parts of Ukraine. There's the part that get random missile attacks, which is most of the country. But you feel pretty safe there. Hundreds of sirens, very few actual deaths from those attacks. Annoying, right? Power outages. That sucks. You can't take a hot shower, cook your food, charge your phone. There's no Wi-Fi. That stinks. But as far as death, it's not so bad. And then you have the closer to the front lines places, which are just constantly getting shelled. And when you deliver food to those places, it's just like boom, boom. Every few minutes, there's another explosion. and you get super used to it. It's like, wow, okay.
But you did also go to Kyiv and also very close to the front line. So was it that after being there a while, you became more daring?
I think it's just more about, what's the word? Awareness, right? Like the more you know about the actual situation, it doesn't change the situation, but it becomes less scary because the fear of the unknown is gone, right? So, for example, we've got a place like Odessa on the south coast. And then nearby Odessa, you have Mykolaiv, also on the coast. Well, Mykolaiv was kind of the favorite target of those two. So Mykolaiv would get shelled every day. Odessa was the more beautiful. Think of it like Paris in World War II. Hitler's not going to destroy the Eiffel Tower because he wants the Eiffel Tower. He wants the Arc de Triomphe if he takes Paris. But if there's some strategic, industrial city 50 miles from Paris, it's finished. Like, they're going to bomb that place to hell. So I didn't feel anything going to Odessa. You're like, oh, like this city is going to be pretty protected. And yeah, they do get a few attacks, but you're not worried that like the hotel downtown is going to get leveled because you know that there are famous international journalists there, and it would be a huge black mark for the Russians' PR, globally, even more than what it is now. So you feel pretty safe. But then when you go to these other places, like, can you deliver food to this little village that's 50 kilometers from this line? You're like, well, are there Russian tanks on the opposite side of that line? Or is this just like a line on a map, and there's actually no Russians for a long, long way, blah, 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 blah. And the more you know about these places, and when you have a military escort or a police escort, then you start to say, oh, okay, I should be okay. And then as soon as you focus on the people, right, when you're handing out food to actual Ukrainians, that's all you focus on. You just focus on, the lives, the feeling in their face and stuff like that. And then when you get back in the car, you go, oh, yeah, now I have to worry about my security. What are the protocols? Blah, 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 blah. But there are lots of people doing a lot more dangerous things thousands of times, and they're fine. So what it really comes down to is luck. You could be in the safest place in Ukraine, and you can get hit by one missile. And even if you're in the bomb shelter, if it's a direct hit, the building collapses and you die. Or you could be a soldier fighting 360 days a year, and you survive the war. So it's a lot about luck. So when I was hired, the organization was based in the west, in Lviv, but it wasn't good enough. We needed to have a logistics center further in the east. And I picked out a city in the middle of the country that was equidistant north and south, and was close enough to the east that we could get supplies to Dnipro, Pokrovsk, Kramatorsk, those kinds of places fairly quickly. Much quicker than from Lviv. We were about 9 or 10 hour drive closer than Lviv. So we were in the center, and I found a warehouse, and we built up a team of 75 people in this central region.
Where did those people come from?
So a lot of them were locals from that region, but some of them were internally displaced persons, IDPs. Others called them refugees, but they hadn't actually left Ukraine. From the east, so from Kharkiv, from Donetsk, these kind of places. And they had come west, but not all the way west, and they had stopped in Uman. It's just a small Hasidic Jewish pilgrimage city. Every Rosh Hashanah, about 10,000 Hasidic Jews descend on this town. And it's very surreal to have a Jewish pilgrimage in the middle of a war, with the pilgrims not speaking Russian, Ukrainian, or English, trying to survive in Ukraine. So our job was to distribute different things. So we would collect things in our warehouse, we would divide them up into different trucks, and then we would send those trucks outward in a spider network of local partners. And what we would call distribution centers, which sometimes was a church, sometimes was a fire station, sometimes was a field behind a bunch of houses. And little motorbikes would pull up and take a couple boxes of food and deliver them to old ladies in some hillside town or something. And so that was pretty fun, kind of running the logistics. And it became more of a regular job instead of a volunteer hodgepodge of doing something different every day. Once we had the Excel sheets, once we had the 75 people hired, once we had the assembly lines and the forklifts and all of that, we just worked 7 days a week. And it was kind of the same every day. Boom, 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 boom. Unless we had power outage, in which it was more difficult. It became a job, right? You kind of forgot you were in a war until a rocket would explode above your warehouse. You're like, right. That's right. There's a war going on.
Oh, now I remember.
Yeah. But that was, I never expected to be, 7 days a week, working 340 hours a month in a cold warehouse with no heating, no air conditioning, no toilet. We had an outhouse about 40 meters from the warehouse. No kitchen in the place we were living. So every day we would just walk over to this truck stop. There was like a little food shop. You could buy a sandwich out of a plastic bag, and they would reheat it for you. I was like, oh gosh, like this is not a healthy way to live. Life's funny sometimes.
Good evening. My name is Bond.
Radio Vagabond.
When I met Orest in Croatia a bit more than a year ago, I asked him how he thought this was going to end, because I couldn't really see it myself. I asked him, where are we a year from now? And now we're past that time, and the war is still going on. So with what you know from being in Ukraine, how do you see this ending?
Well, I would say first off, forget Ukraine, forget Russia. Let's just look at the history of other wars. Everyone on both sides envisions a quick war. Pretty much. Even a siege, you're like, oh, they'll give up soon. We'll just siege them for a weekend or something. And then it turns into like a 7-year ridiculous affair. World War I, you've got a lot of action in the first few months. Germany back and forth, and as soon as they sent those trench lines, pretty much nothing moves for 4 years, right? The U.S. Civil War, people came out with picnics to watch the first battle. They thought it was entertainment. This was going to be a quick little war. Let's go see the professional soldiers do their thing. Pow, pow. Yes, very good. La, la, la. No, bloody, horrible, not fun for either side. And we see the same thing now with Russia and Ukraine. In the beginning, Russia was trying these tactics like, in the next 4 days, the war will be over. In the next week, the war will be over. We're going to surround Kyiv in the next 2 weeks. And then there was a counteroffensive in September, and Ukraine took back some territory, and then they left Kherson and this and that. And now we're starting to kind of see that the battle lines harden a little bit, just like World War I. We're like, okay, here's the fighting areas. Everything on this side is occupied with a low chance of being liberated anytime soon. Everything on this side is pretty safe, and people that left are moving back to those places because they're like, oh, it's on the Ukrainian side now. It's safe. Kind of, again, forcing that trench kind of warfare style, like, well, here's the battle area. And to me and to a lot of people, it looks like it's not going to be a total military victory on its own for either side. Ukraine is not going to push out every single Russian soldier with their military alone. The Russian army is not going to take every single square meter of Ukrainian land on its own. It's going to have to be some kind of signature, some kind of paper diplomacy, some kind of conference or something. maybe Putin dies of an illness in 2 years, and the Russians use that chance to end the war, something like that. But I don't think it's going to be like a great victory at some, village, and then that's the end of the war. I don't think it's going to be like that.
And for you, you've now left Ukraine, and actually tomorrow you are heading back to your home country, the US, and kind of putting your nomad life on hold.
Yeah, so I joined the Ukrainian conflict in March of 2022, and I left in the middle of May 2023. So over a year there, it flew by. But my body felt it, that's for sure. The poor diet, the horrible sleeping, just, work hours, night shifts. My body really felt it. And no community, no events, of course, no real normal life is what I would call it. You mentioned I did get to have 2 weeks off to go to South Africa to join the Nomad base, and that was a huge relief. But to prove a point, when I arrived in South Africa, everyone thought I was homeless, like dirty, used, clothing, rugged hair, big beard.
Yeah, big beard. Yeah, you kind of look like a homeless.
Yeah.
But then the next day you actually took a shower and shaved a little bit, so you look good, Curtin.
I took a shower. I got a haircut in Cape Town, but I was the boss a couple days before with the big beard and the pants with the pockets and the vest. And then I switched locations, and now I'm a dirty homeless person. So I was like, well, that says something.
No, you just looked a little bit like a vagabond.
Yeah, off the radio vagabond. Yeah. But yeah, this is kind of the end of the second phase of my life, as you mentioned. Phase 1, childhood, going to university, figuring out what is the world. Phase 2, quitting university, traveling the world, learning about myself, meeting thousands of people, learning languages, forgetting languages, etc. Starting companies, closing companies. And now that's over. This is the beginning of stage 3, which is return home for the first time in years, spend some time with family, finish my master's in education, get my teaching license, teach high school history, try to take the world knowledge that I've observed, some that I've learned myself, others that have come through my friends and my contacts, try to package that for teenagers, for the next generation, so that they can learn something from the past of humanity. And just kind of get some nice health insurance. Might have to buy my first vehicle in my life. Ooh. So you and I have almost kind of opposite paths. You had the normal life, and then you decided to do the traveling. I was doing the traveling. I'm deciding to do the normal path. So we'll see how it goes.
That's super exciting. And the teenagers that will get you as a teacher are super lucky. It'll be like having Indiana Jones as a teacher. Best of luck with that. And I remember when we met in Brazil, you and a couple of other Nomad cruisers came up with this idea to have a company where you would put people's own tattoos on shirts. I thought it was such a cool idea. Inside Out, right?
Yeah. No, Inside Out Apparel. We're an embroidery company, really. And we'd make these custom shirts that look like the tattoos on your skin. So your shirt would match your skin. It was an experiment. We started it in the Netherlands. COVID came right away and closed all the tattoo studios.
That's why you need a shirt.
Yeah, I persevered. And we bumped into a few roadblocks, and we would pivot and do something else. It's still going on. But during the war, I put it on pause because I was the hands of the company, right? I was the one making all the shirts. So I left my machine in Amsterdam in safety. I've just shipped my machine to the United States last week. So the machine is on a ship right now, headed to America. I will continue to do it. What we found out was that it's not a really scalable company. So we can't make tattoo shirts for 100,000 people. What we can do is we can make shirts for special occasions. If you want to get married and you want a special button-down shirt under your suit jacket, gold thread, navy blue, whatever, like bam, there you go. If you're making a music video and you're in a band and you got a lot of tattoos, we can make a couple shirts for your music video. It would look pretty sweet, So that's what we're focusing on now, is more of that kind of market, because we realized word of mouth with regular people was great, but you get 8 orders and the measuring takes a while, and somebody wants to change their mind and they say, oh, can I do purple instead of blue? And then you have to order the purple shirt, and that takes a few days. So I either need a larger army or I need a different kind of marketing thing, but we're still doing it, and it's going to get back up and running probably more full swing in 2024. I'm going to use the rest of this year to kind of get my feet under me and figure out what's going on family-wise.
Thank you so much, Curtin, for taking the time to have this episode about your time in Ukraine and about the end of your nomad life. Who knows if you're going to get back on the road. But you and I have an idea that we're not going to reveal right now that'll get us talking a lot more in the future.
I bought this microphone just for you, and every time I travel with it, I'm like, hey, there's a little bit of palais in my bag. Yeah.
That's right. Thank you so much, Curtin. It's been great seeing you as always.
Yeah.
Talk to you soon, buddy.
Thanks, palais.
Now, a poem written and read by an AI.
In a world consumed by chaos and strife, there lived a man named Curtin, a beacon of life. When war ignited in Ukraine's land, he decided to lend a helping hand. He ventured to Ukraine via Poland, a land nearby, bringing food, toys, and aid to supply. Through sleepless nights and tireless days, he worked in ways that defied worldly praise. Not to fight, but to uplift, he did strive to bring solace to those barely alive. With danger as his constant companion, he embraced the risk, fueled by compassion. In November, he took a break, with nomad friends, memories to make. A vagabond appearance, a scruffy guise, but greeted warmly, love shining in their eyes. Now, his time as an aid worker draws to an end, his nomadic years are also reaching a bend. Returning to his homeland, a new role awaits, to teach history, sharing knowledge's gates. We are fortunate, blessed, for souls like Curtin, who venture where hope seems uncertain. They put their own lives on hold, unafraid, to extend a hand, providing aid.
I'll be back very soon with one more episode from Uganda, where I'm taking you out in the rainforest to see some mountain gorillas.
We will now be arriving at the end of this installment of the Radio Vagabond. The next stop will be Africa. Please stand clear of the closing doors.
My name's Palabo, and I gotta keep moving.
Radio Vagabond. Produced by RadioGuru.co.uk.